All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of Moby-Dick. Um, and I want to pick up a bit where we left off in our discussion last Sunday and jump more into the text than we have as well. There's been a bit of request to talk about form in relationship to the larger philosophical questions that we've been discussing. So I'm going to start on page 196 in my Penguin edition here, which is chapter 37, Sunset. And I will pull up screen share too, so that we can look at the text together. So one of the things that we were talking about last week are really what I'm going to call the kind of larger metaphysical questions that are um, that are in the text that are asking us to think about religion, that are asking us to think about questions of meaning, of being, why are we here? Those kind of fundamental questions of philosophy. Why am I here? Where did I come from? What's the meaning of life? Is there purpose to this? What happens after we die? And so we were talking a bit about Melville's polytheism, about his approach to religion, religions, two different forms of religious experience, the varieties of religious experience. And we were talking also a little bit about the kind of modern condition of man in the mid-19th century and what it means to be a human being at this time, in this moment of transition. And so I want to, as we go through the chapters today, and I'm hoping we'll get through whiteness. So I'm gonna pause there quite a bit, and we're gonna look at the text. Um, that we can draw in what I found myself thinking about this week were really questions of phenomenology, to use that term, of being and appearance. So we've been talking a lot about being, and we haven't so much talked about the appearance aspect of that. And so what I want to try and do is tie this question of appearances, into the form in which Melville forms, really multitudinous forms that Melville's playing with in this text as well. That's a little Michigan accent pun for you accidentally. Okay. So there's this recurring idea throughout the text that we never really get to see the whole whale, the complete picture, beginning with a kind of reflection on what it means to look at a photograph. I think it's back in chapter 3 in the Spouter Inn. And Melville makes a kind of a great and recurring point to always make us aware of the fact that because of the size of the whale, we never really get to see the whole whale. And by the time we get to the chapter on the whale, on whiteness, he's going to make a lot to do about the markings on the whale, the markings that render the whale identifiable. And so, we've been talking about this question of meaning and being, but tonight I want us to also maybe think a little bit about what does it mean to be able to have the full picture of something? What would it mean if we could truly see the full picture? And what is the whale obviously representing is a big question that we can try and answer. I have no no desire to answer. But this positioning of the self in relationship to the whale is also going to reinforce, let me let Joan in, this kind of idea that we never really get to have the full picture, that our idea of what something is always only a subjective truth, limited by our own capacity to see. And this creates a question of representation in form. And so here we have this book, Moby-Dick, or the whale. And each of these chapters, so we have a sermon, we have plays, we have a character, kind of notes almost. We have these conversations unfolding. We get these inner portraits of consciousness. Each chapter in its own way is taking a distinct form so that it takes on its own iteration of representation, trying to get at the same thing. And this is going to take us to the first two sentences when we finally do get to that chapter on the whale and the question of, well, what is it? What is it with this whale? What is it with this whiteness? So the multiplication of the forms in themselves represent the kind of endlessness of possibility, of interpretation, trying to get at it from multiple perspectives at once. And I think last week this came up a little bit, and I gave you, there's that nice Salman Rushdie quote about, a really good narrative is kind of like slowly spinning a strand of hair between your fingertips to look at it from all sides. But this is not quite that, right? This is not a single strand. This is the idea that the image of the whole in itself rests upon the subjective perception of the object that one is trying to understand. What is it that you see? What is it that you see? And so let's go to, I'm going to pull up so we can get into a bit of this with the text. I'm going to pull up screen share, chapter 37. Let me grab it here. Can everyone see that? So in these sequence of chapters, so 37, we have Ahab. In 38, we are going to have Starbuck. In 39, Stub. In 40, harpooners and sailors. And that is going to unfold as a play where we'll meet Pip and Tashtego, among others. And then we get to 41, Moby-Dick, Ishmael. And then directly after that, we come to the whiteness of the whale, 42. And so we have this kind of intentional sequencing of chapters that are leading us up to this chapter on the whiteness of the whale. And the chapter right before it, Moby-Dick, the Ishmael chapter, is going to bring us back to our narrator, because in 37, 38, and 39, in Ahab, Starbuck, and Stub, and then in chapter 40, with those slightly different. In these three chapters, we're going to have a kind of inner life, right? We're going to be introduced to the inner life of these characters themselves. So once again, taking on another form. So, and we have this bit of play staging. Play, we have these scene directions for what's happening here. Sunset, the cabin by the stern windows. Ahab sitting alone, gazing out. And then we're in the eye. I leave a white and turbid wake, pale waters, paler cheeks. Where I sail, the envious billows sidelong swell to whelm my track. Let them, but first I pass. Yonder, by the ever-brimming goblet's rim, the warm waves blush like wine. The gold brow plumbs the blue. The diver sun, slow dived from noon, goes down, my soul mounts up. She wearies with her endless hill. Is then the crown too heavy that I wear? This iron crown of Lombardy? Yet is it bright with many a gem? I, the wearer, see not its far flashings, but darkly feel that I wear that. The dazzling confounds. 'Tis iron that I know, not gold. 'Tis split too that I feel. The jagged edge gulls me so. My brain seems to beat against the solid metal. I, steel skull, mine, the sort that needs no helmet in the most brain-battering fight. I'm going to pause there for a second. Stop talking. I've been talking for 50 minutes. Any thoughts? It's the first time we're really meeting Ahab.
Sam, where was that?
Where's what? Where's what, Bob?
What you just read?
Can you see screen share?
Yeah, it's
I,
on that
I,
page.
it's just the beginning. I just read the opening two paragraphs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Oops. Now I've highlighted things. Any's, what do you know now that you didn't know about Ahab? That's one question. Why is Melville leading us into this interior scene? We're going to get this repetition of whiteness from now on, a white and turbid wake. I leave a white and turbid wake. But we're also going to get this repetition of metals, lots of silver and gold and metals and this kind of hardness. Yeah, Joe?
Well, just to jump in, we there's a lot of dread around Ahab. He's perceived really kind of negatively and scary. He's old, he's ugly, he's scary, he's crazy. So now finally we're getting into his head, just as you say. So I think it's designed to develop a little bit of sympathy for him, maybe in the reader, or whatever, or that's what it accomplishes somehow, that we can actually, yeah, relate to him, get some sympathy, see what it's like on the other side of that mania, what's beneath the mania, and he seems kind of, I don't know, what would you, and it feels Shakespearean to me. It's a soliloquy. Um,
Yeah.
that was a riff I was kind of going on a lot in this reading. There are asides, and there's little in 39 that's like a dialogue. But also it's sort of Shakespearean in the grandeur of the characters. And Ahab I think, resides somewhere, between King Lear and Richard III, and maybe Macbeth. I don't know. You know, he's driven with a crazy idea,
No Hamlet? Not Hamlet?
He's well, he's called old, but doesn't it say
Ooh,
he had just
Lear.
gotten married?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, more Lear-like maybe, but is he old? I mean, that was a question I had. They refer to him as this old man all the time, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. Of course, their ideas of old and ours are pretty different, but maybe he's 42. But
I think he's,
the yeah,
What, Terry?
I think it's 58.
If-
58.
is an age given actually, or is that just a
No, no,
fond,
that's I think reference, but
fond, con- fond conjecture? Yeah, sounds good. But
I'm much
over
older than 58,
the
so it might be something I made up, but I think it's
Has
58.
anyone figured out which leg is missing yet? No? Okay, good.
yeah, that doesn't matter. I don't like that question. You never see the whole whale. You don't, I mean, there are,
Exactly.
it's a quality of the writing that it should inspire us. But the end of that page, I don't know if you were going to get to it. There's some
Yeah.
more heavy stuff. I don't know if you know.
I paused there for a reason before we do you want to read it, Joe? Do you want to take us to the
Well,
end?
I could do.
Yeah,
I was thinking I could start just with uh, "'Twas not so hard a task."
perfect.
Is that? And
Yeah.
then "'Twas not so hard a task. I thought to find one stubborn at the least. But my one cogged circle fits into all their various wheels, and they revolve. Wow, talk about cogged circles. That's Melville in this book. But anyway, or if you will, like so many anthills of powder, they all stand before me, and I their match. Oh, hard, very Shakespearean. That to fire others, the match itself must needs be wasting. What I've dared, I've willed, and what I've willed, I'll do. They think me mad. sounds like Lear. Starbuck does, but I'm demoniac. Demoniac? I am madness maddened. That wild madness that's only calm to comprehend itself. Wow. The prophecy was that I should be dismembered, and I lost this leg. I now prophesy that I will dismember my dismemberer. Now then, be the prophet and the fulfiller one. The more that's ye great gods ever were. I laugh and hoot at ye cricket players, ye pugilists, ye deaf Burkes and blinded Bendigos. What does he mean by Burke? I circled that. Does he mean like Edmund Burke?
Edmund
Yeah,
Burke?
that's what comes to my mind, but I don't have a notation on the sentence, so
No,
I
anyway.
can look it up.
There's a
Uh,
glossy, they were boxers.
Oh, they were boxers, Thomas?
Burke and Bendigo, English boxing
oh,
champions
okay.
in the
Okay.
1830s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have the
It's-
critical edition there?
Now,
No,
Wikipedia is very handy, I found out.
Oh, no, see, I can't do that. But
it's the Norton.
oh, you got the Norton. Nice. Yeah, yeah.
I will not say, as schoolboys do to bullies, take some one of your own size, don't pummel me. No, ye've knocked me down, and I am up again, but ye have run and hidden. Come forth, and from behind, you cotton bags. I have no long gun to reach ye. Come, Ahab's compliments to ye. Come and see if you can swerve me. Swerve me? You cannot swerve me, else ye swerve yourselves. Man has ye here. Swerve me, the path to my fixed purpose is laid with iron rails, whereon my soul is grooved to run. Over unsounded gorges, through the rifled hearts of mountains, under torrents' beds, unerringly I rush. Not's an obstacle, not's an angle to the iron way.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. I think it is. I think it is very lyrish in this. You can't, you can't swerve me. You can't, all that protesting.
Well, that part in particular reminds me of Richard III
And Richard III.
and that self-reflective inner interrogation, who am I? Am I a murderer? No, not I. Am I? And you cannot bend my will
Right,
is
right.
what Ahab is saying there. You cannot swerve me. You cannot bend my will. Bend my will? You can't do that.
Yeah.
He's set upon it.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Yes. David, do you want to jump in?
I'm done.
Oh, I'd raised my hand before. That passage is so great, I forgot. Like it wiped out anything that was in my head before. I was just like staring at the text of like, what are we reading? It's just so great. I was also maybe as you were reading, and Joe, thank you for the like comparisons to Shakespeare. Maybe because I just saw Frankenstein, I was thinking like also Paradise Lost. It's just like almost railing against his creator in some way.
Yes, very much so. There's a lot of Milton hiding in here.
There's a lot of Milton in here. Okay, I'll put my hand down. I really did forget where I was going to say. So,
well, if you remember, put your hand back up.
I will.
Okay. I mean, that's beautiful. I think Melville pulls us under similar way. Barbara?
Sorry to be jumping in midway. This is my first time here.
Welcome.
But yeah, totally with you on the Shakespearean stuff. But I was also noticing in this passage, like the poetic, right? Like the way that the Melville's really sort of creating a poetic sort of weaving through the passages. And I wanted to just note one thing about the one paragraph we haven't read. So the chapter called Sunset. So the sun is setting. And in the first paragraph, we have white. In the second paragraph, we have bright. In the third paragraph, we have white. And then, so he has this attention to these rhyming words of white, bright, light.
And light and night.
Yeah.
Yes, and then at the very end of that third paragraph, you have good night, good night. So it's this play of like light and dark, like the darkness coming in, that's sort of woven through with these like rhyming echoes, which I really appreciate in the writing, and feel it feels like it kind of complicates everything because they're playing against each other.
Yes, beautiful, beautifully spotted. Also, I think I became fixated on the O sounds in this as well, the kind of drawn out O sound, O, the from the beginning with that long swell to the gold brow, plums, blue, noon, down, mounts, and then the O's that we get in some chapters we get these repetitions of rhetorical questions, but with Ahab here it's the repetition of these exclamation points, which is the emphasis through repetition that you're hearing in the prose. And then also another word that's going to come back in the sequence of chapters is will. And the will and the nil and the hill, right? From the endless hill to the ant hills, as well, repetition between those second and fourth paragraphs, that the diver's son slow dived from noon goes down, my soul mounts up, she wearies with her endless hill, right? And you can see the arch of the sun almost falling into the sea or rising from it. And then, or if you will, like so many ant hills of powder, they all stand before me and I their match. And so he's undone by this one of light, and yet he feels himself the conqueror of these others. Alexander, Althaus.
Yeah. I'd like to give another perspective of that. I'm reading Moby-Dick in German. I read it twice. And
Okay.
this afternoon, I've read this chapter and the following for the first time in English. And I'd like to talk about a crime somehow, because the first version of Moby-Dick I read, I didn't knew that before, of course. And I finally found out that it has 64 chapters and the original is about double of them. So in
Oh,
the first translation I read, this chapter doesn't exist at all.
what?
And
That is what did you I don't how is that even legally possible?
yeah, that's why I'm talking about a crime. It was
I would like to report a literary crime, please.
I looked up and in the
The
German
Germans
Wikipedia,
just cut the chapter?
yeah, it was incredible. And I read the Wikipedia article, the German one for Moby Dick, and there's a list of all the translations. And there's a very short comment on each one. And for that one I read, which is from 1927, it says something like, the translator obviously hated the book.
Oh.
And and there's a couple of more.
A new theory of translation is born. Can you send me this? This is fascinating.
Yeah, I sent you the link.
Were you like, why is everyone talking about why we're reading such a big book when you had like half the size of the book and you're like, it's not that bad?
Yeah, it's an adventure story. It's not bad, but it's just an adventure story. And then after I read that article, I got through the list. And the first translation of Moby Dick worth reading in German is from the early 2000s. So it took 150 years to get a good translation of that book. And that one I read just a couple of weeks ago. And it's like a difference between how to say, the Ulysses and the Donald Duck story. It's incredibly different. And you just find these poetic parts even on the first pages. It was such a revealing feeling to read the good version of the book you think you know. So, and I think this chapter is a very good point to see how the book is beautiful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I'm very curious about the history of how this translation was published as some kind of, yeah, please send me whatever I'm curious.
Yeah.
And I'm
Can I
happy that you've acquired the the full text.
Can I very briefly butt in with my own Moby-Dick publication weirdness story?
Sure, sure.
Because I'm a little worried that I am repeating false knowledge.
Okay.
But I have heard this. I think I read about this on a Wikipedia browse one time,
Okay.
that one of the early editions of the book, I believe it was the English, as in the location of the world edition of the book, somehow published while missing the last chapter. So the book just ends without any explanation of like Ishmael getting picked up after the shipwreck. Like the book just ends with the shipwreck, and like you just have to assume that he's a
I
ghost
see
now.
you're picking up your point from last week and assuming Ishmael survives. Noted.
Give a girl a fallacy, an easy an assumption. Okay, I don't know, I spent like 16 years just assuming it was Ishmael. You can't change a horse's habit that easily.
Well, I wonder if anyone's written a nice chronicle of all of the interesting publications of Moby Dick over time that have, done violence to the novel. That would be interesting to catalog that. Altaz.
Yeah, your comment about Richard III was very interesting. Also, there's that mention in the White chapter about the White Tower of London and how frightening that is, and that connection to Richard III, but also the I will dismember my dismember kind of thing. That sounds very much like
Yeah.
Richard III voice and expression. But while reading this, I was thinking about what you were saying at the beginning about reading this through as a meditation on loneliness and isolation, because here you kind of see his isolation. You kind of see that something has happened to him, right? He's been dismembered, but he's also been near death, and maybe he was expected to die, and this strong will has brought him back from the brink, yet it's also isolating him. It's making him seem like a mad person and all that. So there's this complexity about that, the madness itself, because his madness also might have been what helps him survive and go forward. Yes, yet it's something that's also unraveling him and, taking him to an ultimate destiny that might not be so great for him. So I think there's a lot for such a short chapter. There's so much expression of that isolation, the crown, the heaviness of the crown, this kind of responsibility. Maybe I know something you don't, or and all that. So I just to mention that.
Yes, and we're going to get different variations and repetitions of that madness maddened, of what that maddening madness is. And I think that there are different ways to hear the word madness there. Last week, I think we talked a little bit about, in the conversation around religion, critiques of rationalism. And so we could look at it through that lens, but there's also, I think, this larger question of what it means to try to will oneself over those forces that one ultimately has no control over, which certainly relates to that question of madness too. But here, we're in the inner thought, we're in the inner life. And since we're talking a little bit about Shakespeare and somebody brought up alone, I'll go back up to the stage setting, and you see it says Ahab sitting alone. So in the early publications of the Shakespeare text, the Latin would have been, the stage direction used would have been solus, which is alone. And the soliloquy, born as a way of creating a place apart on stage where the actor could presume to be alone, is always staged as that solus, as that alone. So you're also then in the inner, I want to say inner realm of the mind, as well, where certainly there can be a kind of madness. Ed?
Yeah, thanks. There seems to be a larger framework which keeps sticking out at me, which Ahab doesn't recognize. And that might be because of part of his madness. But Ahab got himself on a boat, sailed somewhere across the world, found Moby-Dick, and tried to kill him. And Moby-Dick fought back and took his leg. And it's as if Ahab believes that Moby-Dick didn't have a right to fight back. That just because he was trailing him in the ocean, that he should let himself be harpooned and turned into whale oil. But I think there's a setup, and Ahab set it up.
Yeah, I think in a way it's part of the bookends of the sequence of chapters. What is the whale to Ahab? What is the whale to Ishmael? What is the symbolism of the whale? And I want to say in the context to the reader. And so, I mean, I could ask, do we get an answer to that question here? Not, I mean, I want to say not really. There's, but we do get that iron sense of will. Right? And it's not the presumption that for some reason the whale won't fight back, but that man, that he must conquer the whale. When I was in Ronda a few weeks ago in Spain, they have one of the largest bullfighting rings. They have a famous bullfighting ring there. And the first time I visited there and took the tour, I didn't know, how naive I am. I didn't know they killed the bull at the end of a bullfight. And so the tour guide said that, and then took us into the museum where they had the history of bullfighting on the wall. And I said to my friend I was with, I was like, the rise of bullfighting has to have happened like concomitantly with the Enlightenment. Like, there's no way bullfighting is not a reflection of Enlightenment thinking that man can somehow conquer nature. And it was like the first sentence of the history of bullfighting in the museum. And so I think there's a bit of that mentality of what it means for man to be able to will himself over nature through reason in order to conquer it, to live. But Ahab is not a man of reason. He's not Ulysses. He's not rational. He's mad. He's mad. And so we see that tragic element in the obsession. And there's something terribly beautiful about how isolating it is for him. But it's a kind of madness, and it's never clear that everyone isn't going to die. That this isn't somehow fated from the beginning. Let's pull Starbuck in, if that sounds good. So we go from sunset to dusk, and by the mainmast, Starbuck leaning against it. My soul is more than matched. She's overmanned, and by a madman, insufferable sting, that sanity should ground arms on such a field. But he drilled deep down and blasted all my reason out of me. He drilled deep down and blasted all my reason out of me. I think I see his impious end. Right back to prophecy, echoing from the previous, also a signature of a tragedy where what is prophesized, we have a prophecy and then the whole of the play is an attempt to escape the prophecy, which inevitably leads to the fruition of the prophecy. I think I see, I forget the rhetorical word for that. I think I see his impious end, but feel that I must help him to it. Will I? Nil I? The ineffable thing has tied me to him. Tows me with a cable I have no knife to cut. Horrible old man! Who's over him? He cries. He would be a Democrat to all above. Look how he lords it over all below. Oh, I plainly see my miserable office. To obey, rebelling, and worse yet, to hate with touch of pity. For in his eyes I read some lurid woe would shrivel me up, had I it. Yet is there hope. Time and tide flow wide. The hated whale has the round, watery world to swim in, as the small goldfish has its glassy globe. His heaven insulating purpose God may wedge aside. I would upheart were it not like lead, but my whole clock's run down, my heart the all-controlling weight. I have no key to lift again. And then I'll pause there. We get a bit of a pause in a scene, a burst of revelry from the forecastle. But it begins, Starbuck, the inner reflection of Starbuck begins with this kind of meditation on what it feels like to feel a force beyond oneself. And for Ahab, that force is the whale, and for Starbuck, that force is Ahab. And we have that repetition of the inner torment of the will I, nil I, the negation of the will, that an effable thing has tied me to him, right? The whale tows me with a cable I have no knife to cut, the sense of being pulled along. And we get this consistent tension in his, I think we can call it a soliloquy. We get this tension between the will I, nil I, and then to obey rebelling. And I read some lurid woe would shrivel me up. Yet there is hope. So we get pity, which almost feels, yes, kind of strange. He's a horrible man's kind of, the word disgusting comes to mind, but it's not that. It's this almost insufferable quality of pity. That's also a kind of tenderness. And then, we get this kind of question and a statement in the line about hope. You can read that two ways. Yet there is hope. So again, this kind of tension, this tug and pull, and then a burst of revelry from the forecastle. And again, more repetition of this kind of crying out. Oh God, to sail with such a heathen crew that have small touch of human mothers in them, whelped somewhere by the sharkish sea. The white whale is their demogorgon. There we hear Milton. We hear Milton and we get this parallel of being dragged into the underworld, right? This kind of monstrous, this kind of terrorizing monstrousness that pulls one into the underworld. This kind of demonic figure. Hark, the infernal orgies. The revelry is forward. Mark the unfaltering silence aft. Methinks it pictures life. Foremost through the sparkling sea shoots on the gay, embattled bantering bow, but only to drag dark Ahab after it, where he broods within his sternward cabin. Builded over the dead water of the wake, and further on, hunted by its wolfish gurglings. The long howl thrills me through. Peace, ye revelers, and set the watch, O life. 'Tis in an hour like this, with soul beat down and held to knowledge, as wild untutored things are forced to feed, O life. 'Tis now that I do feel the latent horror in thee, but 'tis not me. The horror is out of me, and with the soft feeling of the human in me, yet will I try to fight ye, ye grim phantom futures. Stand by me, hold me, bind me, O ye blessed influences. So now we have Starbuck's voice to hold in conversation with Ahab's voice. And there's this sense of being pulled, right? There's this sense of bondage. Any thoughts, reflections? Anyone else? Anyone want to jump in? Yeah, Mary, go for it.
But this chapter where Starbuck is recognizing that Ahab is taking them somewhere where it's going to be very dangerous and difficult to be, and
Yes.
the previous chapter where Ahab is saying he has that phrase about the cogged circle, but it turns and keeps everybody going. He recognizes his obsession. But he also recognizes that he's the guy in charge, and nobody is saying you're crazy and you're going to get us all killed. They're all, I mean, whether that's just the politics of the ship, and the captain is in charge, or whether this is some larger thing that Ahab is reflecting on, that he still is able to command this group of people to help him carry out his obsession.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to those first lines. I mean, what do you make of, so my soul is more than matched. My soul is more than matched. So he's at least his equal. My soul is overmanned. She's overmanned by a madman. Insufferable sting. That sanity should ground arms on such a field. But he drilled deep down and blasted all my reason out of me. I think I see his impious end, but feel that I must help him to it. There's no regard for his own end in that phrasing. What do you make of that kind of?
Well, again, there's no resistance to Ahab's mission. I mean, he can't resist. He's saying, I've been ground down. I can't fight this. I'm being, dragged along by a cable that I can't cut. There's a certain, I don't know, the word I think is not inevitability, but for him it is inevitable. He feels that he can't fight this.
Mm-hmm. You've given us
Even though he recognizes it as madness.
Wow. Art and Catherine?
I'm very interested in this book as a political allegory, which is one of the themes that you threw up in the first session. And I have to differ with this interpretation of Ahab because of Starbuck, because it does seem that although he expresses a bit more fatalism in this chapter, that there was an earlier point, which I'm searching back for now, where he does throw up some resistance and does say explicitly to Ahab when it's the scene below deck where Ahab is rallying the crew in a sort of demagogic way with the gold coin that he hammers there. And Starbuck does say, "Is this not madness?" and he's sort of overruled by the passions of the mob there. That what reminded me of that was where he said, he who would be a Democrat to all above, look how he lords it over all below. And also I thought the most striking passage that we didn't talk about from our previous readings is in the chapter on knights and squires,
Yes.
36, where there's kind of this, I would almost want to say, Whitman-esque paean to democracy, and it says, this august dignity I treat of is not the dignity of kings and robes, but that abounding dignity which has no robed investiture. Um, so I think there is this, Starbuck is kind of the embodiment. He's kind of the epitome of this democratic spirit that does rebel against the implacable dictatorship of Ahab. And it, and I thought it was also striking in another chapter where several times Ahab's powers is referred to as usurpations, which certainly harkens to the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. So I think this is the passage, I pulled it up from 36. I think Whitman's right on, the reference is right on the nose. Do you want to read it? It's a really nice passage. It is a kind of paean to that lowercase d idol of democracy. So I think it's the right one.
I'll pick up just a little bit in
Yeah.
from there. Men may seem detestable as joint stock companies and nations. Knaves, fools, and murderers there may be. Men may have mean and meager faces, but man in the ideal is so noble and so sparkling, such a grand and glowing creature, that over any ignominious blemish in him, all his fellows should run to throw their costliest robes. That immaculate manliness we feel within ourselves, so far within us that it remains intact, though all the outer characters seem gone, bleeds with keenest anguish at the undraped spectacle of a valor-ruined man. Nor can piety itself, at such a shameful sight, completely stifle her upbraidings against the permitting stars. But this august dignity I treat of is not the dignity of kings and robes, but that abounding dignity which has no robed investiture. Thou shalt see it shining in the arm that wields a pick or drives a spike, that democratic dignity which, on all hands, radiates without end from God Himself, the great God absolute, the center and circumference of all democracy, His omnipresence, our divine equality.
Mm.
And again, my thesis was that he's describing Starbuck there, and Starbuck's role is kind of as at least an attempted democratic check on the dictatorship of Ahab, although it's definitely not going well by the point we're at now.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's not going well, both in the novel or like in real life. So,
Well, to say nothing of separation of powers, I think in the context of part of what I was thinking about for this week, I was really struck also by these lines from the bottom to the top here, which set up the contrast for the end of the paragraph, where he says, but man in the ideal. So we have, I mean, throughout all of these, there's so many layers of tension of, the ideal, and then what is human, what is possible, and limitation, perfection, and heaven, and the demonic, and hell. And so, but man in the ideal is noble, sparkling, is grand, is glowing. No blemish. No blemish. And this kind of reflection on the appearance is going to echo too when we come back to, well, what does the whale look like? What is this sublime quality of beauty and terror that we perceive in whiteness? This perfection of an ideal in the most perfect marble, or the kind of horrible ugliness of the albino. Why should one be beautiful and the other be ugly? And we have these almost, I think of Nietzsche the associations between good and bad and the language itself, to be noble, to be sparkling, to be glowing. And then without blemish. And then we come to the end of, we get out of that, so the divine equality, thing appears the thing, but color differentiates thing from thing, but no color exists in whiteness. And so whiteness both becomes an ideal of equality, but it also becomes, and as he's going to point out, it is also the foundation of empire and domination, and colonialism and violence as well. And so we have the tensions holding in that aspect as well. Catherine, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just have a short observation about the words, the ineffable thing. I guess to me, I read that as despite the Enlightenment, despite rationality, despite even Starbuck as kind of the democratic man in this story, you can be pulled into this thing, or acknowledge it within yourself, or be pulled in the circle of it, which I guess we also feel somewhat in our situation these days. But I'm just going to hang on to those words as I continue to read the book. And I just wanted to call attention to it, for me anyway.
I'm sorry if I could just real quick. My other footnote that I was at a loss to put my finger on before is in 36, the quarter deck. And that's where Starbuck talks back to Ahab and says, I came here to hunt whales, not my commander's vengeance. How many barrels will thy vengeance yield thee, even if thou gettest it, Captain Ahab? And then later on, he says, vengeance on a dumb brute, cried Starbuck. That simply smote thee from blindest instinct. Madness. To be enraged with the dumb thing, Captain Ahab, seems blasphemous. So he's acting as that democratic voice, I would say.
Yes. A protest.
So I don't know if those words struck anybody else, but it's staying with me. The ineffable thing.
The ineffable thing. Well,
what is that? I feel like the book is exploring that, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I think the way that you posed it as a question is a really good question. What is that ineffable thing? And then I think Melville gives us a number of ways to modify the question, which is part of the approach and form. So what is that ineffable thing that Ahab seeks in vengeance on the whale? What is that ineffable thing in the prophecy? What is that ineffable thing in feeling as though one has a duty to something, even though they know it's mad? What is that ineffable quality of needing to set to sea? What is the ineffable feeling of being bound to land? Right? What are these things? So one thing that we talked, I made the joke about the leg last week, which isn't really a joke, but I think Terry made the joke. I asked the question, but I think Melville is showing us a great deal, but he's also not showing us a great deal. And part of, one of the, I think, central questions of the book is that question. So at the beginning tonight, when I said, what would it mean to see the whole picture of anything? What would it mean to have, you think about the song of the sirens, or the scene of the sirens in the Odyssey, and what the sirens promise Odysseus is full knowledge of everything past and present and to come, is the full picture. But the cost of that is life itself. The cost is life itself. And so he tries to conquer that force, right, by having slaves bind him to the masthead of the ship and stop up his ears so that he can, sail past, stop up their ears so that he can sail past and hear the song without having to give his life for it. Okay. And, here you have, I guess we could ask the question, does Ahab, is Ahab invested in his life in any real way? But that doesn't feel like the real question to me. That question is such a small question. Part of that ineffable quality is that kind of particular nature of being, and knowing that one already, he's been shaped by the whale. That we all appeared here shaped by some force that exists beyond us, something that we don't have control over, which is also calling back to that question of appearances, and appearances in relationship to a quality. So Melville, in no uncertain terms, is also going to describe God akin to the whale, right? The full majesty and significance of the mighty whale and the glory of the whale. And I pray thee to the whale. And he's going to tell us time and again that there is no earthly way for us in our smallness to see the full majesty of the whale, right? So there's this question of what we can see and what we can't see. And the whale is as indefinite as God. So there's this question of definition too, I would add to the ineffable. What is indefinite? What is indescribable? And here we have these inner, portraits of our, primary, some of our primary characters. And there's also, we talked a little bit about the postscript last week and the question of who survives, much to Isabella's chagrin. And
not chagrin.
I know. But the question of, so who's telling the story? Who gets to tell the story? And then what is the line of vision, of the one who survives to tell the story? And what did they see? And so do we even have the full image of anything? There's something deeply humiliating about the limitation of our vision as human beings that Melville makes us keenly aware of, while also reminding us what power it has to shape a society, to shape a nation, and that we can't get around that deeply particular subjective nature of existence. Let's go to, shall we jump to 39? Draw a bit of that. Draw a bit of the play in here. So we get it. We also get it's a nice segue too from what Hart was saying in the 2 chapters on knights and squires. Now to the first night watch, where 40. I mean, we get a brief. Let me grab it here. We get stub, and then in 40 we get the play dialogue. Does someone else want to read this one? A bit shorter. Any takers? Isabella, go for it.
How much should I read?
All of it. Read all of it. It's not very long.
The entire thing. Okay.
It is,
awesome.
but it is but a short page.
Right. Chapter 39, First Night Watch. Foretop, Stub Solus, and Mending a Brace. Clear my throat. I've been thinking over it ever since, and that has the final consequence. Why so? Because a laugh's the wisest, easiest answer to all that's queer. And come what will, one comfort's always left. That unfailing comfort is, it's all predestined. I heard not all his talk with Starbuck, but to my poor eye Starbuck then looked something as I the other evening felt. Be sure the old mogul has fixed him too. I twigged it, knew it, had the gift, might readily have prophesied it, for when I clapped my eye upon his skull I saw it. Well, Stubb, wise Stubb, that's my title. Well, Stubb, what of it, Stubb? Here's a carcass. I know not all that may be coming, but be it what it will, I'll go to it laughing. Such a waggish leering as lurks in all your horribles. I feel funny. Fa la li ra ski ra. What's my juicy little pair at home doing now? Crying its eyes out? Giving a party to the last arrived harpooneers, I dare say. Gay as a frigate's pennant, and so am I. Fa la li ra ski ra. Oh, and I don't know how to sing this, so I'm just gonna read it out loud. We'll drink tonight with hearts as light to loves as gay and fleeting as bubbles that swim on the beaker's brim and break on the lips while meeting. A brave stave that... Who calls? Mr. Starbuck? Aye, aye, sir. He's my superior. He has his too, if I'm not mistaken. Aye, aye, sir, just through with this job. Coming.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Brava. Thank you. Did
Thank
anything,
you.
did
Thank
anything,
you for the applause. I see it.
did anything jump out at you while you were reading it?
To be honest, I was kind of lost in the moment. No. I'll probably think of something after I stop talking. But
okay. Yeah.
Wait, yeah, something did drop out. Sorry, my bad. Something did jump out. It was the reappearance of the idea of prophecy and predestination. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we get the solace, right? So stop alone. But he breaks the third wall with us, the reader. Unlike the first two, down in that last little paragraph, aye, aye, sir, aside. And then he talks to us. He's my superior. He has his too, if I'm not mistaken. Aye, aye, sir, just through with this job coming. And so he's laughing, he's talking out loud. A lot of reflection on he's watching all this unfolding, and he says that the laugh's the wisest, and I'll go to it a laughing. I feel funny. Any other reflections? Anyone want to jump in? See lots of comments in the chat.
I wonder if continuing our Shakespearean analogy that Stubb is a little bit of comic relief. And also I think he's prominent here because there's a kind of identification with Ishmael, who maybe would agree has a bit of a wry voice as kind of an observer on the proceedings. So I think he's part of Ishmael also as a narrator.
Yeah. Yeah, he's positioning himself as a narrator in this short passage. Yeah, unlike the first two contained fully within the soul. Barbara?
Isabella's reading made me aware of something I'd never thought of before, but I'm grateful to you for drawing it to my attention, which is the asides. The aside, which you didn't read rightly, is silent. So it's just like punctuation, and Melville's doing so much with punctuation in this book,
yes.
too. And it was just like, these are words, so I read them in my head, but really I shouldn't. So it was just an interesting observation for me.
Yeah, very much so. Isabella, I think you're now our dedicated reader. I think there's a mass choice better than me. So they were demanding an Audible book.
I did not intend to be crowned with this, but I would happily take the burden if it is the desire of the populace. Sure, while I'm around.
I run a democratic ship, so it's
unlike Ahab.
no comment. So then we go into 40, Forecastle Midnight. So we're also going through a cycle of the day in this sequence of chapters. And we begin with more singing. And then we get a kind of a scene of the ship, the Nantucket sailors. And we're going to meet Pip. We're going to get to interact with Pip, who somebody once told me is the loneliest character in all of English literature, but I don't know if that's true. Does Does someone want to read a little bit of it so we can get a sense, maybe starting at after the song, unless someone would like to sing I'm No Singer, second Nantucket Sailor. We can also perform in cast roles if you like. Catherine, go for it. Oh,
You're muted.
your microphone is not on.
Avast the chorus, 8 bells there, do you hear, well boy? Strike the bell 8, thou Pip, thou blackling, and let me call the watch. I've the sort of mouth for that, the hogshead mouth. So, star bowlines, ahoy, 8 bells there below, tumble up. I guess I didn't read the aside after Barbara's
You don't have to read the aside.
thrusts his head down the scuttle. I don't know what the scuttle is.
Anyone want to take the next one? Yeah, go for it.
I suppose
you can
I
just
may
jump
as
in.
well.
You don't have to raise your hand.
Okay. Wait, just read like Dutch sailor's part?
Yeah.
Okay. Grand snoozing tonight, matey. Fat night for that. I marked this in our old mogul's wine. It's quite as deadening to some as filliping to others. We sing, they sleep. I lie down there like ground tier butts. At 'em again. There, take this copper pump and hail 'em through it. Tell 'em to avast dreaming of their lasses. Tell 'em it's the resurrection. They must kiss their last and come to judgment. That's the way, that's it. Fifro ain't spoiling with eating Amsterdam butter. Ain't spoiled with eating Amsterdam butter.
Ain't spoiled with eating Amsterdam butter. So, yes, boys, let's have a jig or two before we ride to anchor in Blanket Bay. What say? There comes the other watch. Stand by all legs. Pip, little Pip, hurry with your tambourine. Don't know where it is. Don't know where it is. And we can skip over a little bit, and then we here you are, Pip, and there's the windlass bits. Up you mount now, boys. Go it, Pip, bang it, bellboy, ring it, ding it, sting it, quig it, bellboy, make fireflies, break the jinglers. Jinglers, you say, there goes another, dropped off 1 pound or so. And I'm gonna come over here and ask someone to read. Sorry for the final here, and I cannot hear this without thinking of Joyce, and the crack that we get in Ulysses. Does someone want to read Pip? Terry, thank you.
Jollies. Lord help such jollies. Crish crash. There goes the jibstay. Blang wang. God, duck lower, Pip. Here comes the royal yard. It's worse than being in the world woods the last day of the year. Who'd go climbing after chestnuts now? But there they go, all cursing, and here I don't. Fine prospects to 'em. They're on the road to heaven. Hold on hard. Jiminy, what a squall. But those chaps there are the worst yet. They are your white squalls, they. White squalls, white whales, sure. Have I heard all the chat just now, and the white whale, sure. But spoken of once, and only this evening, it makes me jingle all over like my tambourine. That anaconda of an old man swore him to hunt him. Oh, thou big white God aloft, there's somewhere in yon darkness. Have mercy on the small black boy down here. Preserve him from all men that have no bowels to feel fear.
Have no bowels to feel fear. And then I'm just gonna, because so we have this, we have in his voice, we come back to white, right? The big white God. Oh, thou big white God aloft, there somewhere in yon darkness. And then just to take us into 41, Moby-Dick, we come back to our narrator. I, Ishmael, was one of that crew. I mean, we could even just pause there. What do you make of that segue in? Where are we now, spatially, temporally? in our story. Yeah, Isabella.
I would say that my first impression, at least, was it was a sort of return to the retrospective view. Like that, like, it's about, like, I am telling you the story way after all this happened, kind of return to that, unlike the play scripts, which are kind of necessarily, I think, feel a bit more rooted in the presence and the performance.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my instinct anyway.
Yep, very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Barbara, did you want to jump in? I saw you unmuted. Or no?
No, sorry.
Oh, it's
I,
okay. Just
I
checking. Anyone else? Any other readings? So call me Ishmael. Now we come to 41, right? 40, 41. I, Ishmael, was one of that crew. My shouts had gone up with the rest. My oath had been welded with theirs, and stronger I shouted, and more did I hammer and clinch my oath because of the dread in my soul. A wild, mystical, sympathetical feeling was in me. Ahab's quenchless feud seemed mine. With greedy ears, I learned the history of that murderous monster against whom I and all the others had taken our oaths of violence and revenge. For some time past, though at intervals only, the unaccompanied, secluded white whale had haunted those uncivilized seas, mostly frequented by the sperm whale fishermen. Yeah, Joan, go for it.
Yeah, just you've sort of seen them all go over to follow Ahab, despite all the misgivings and the foreshadowings that even he has gone over, to this monomaniacal uh, uh, goal.
Yeah.
He's taken them all under, and I think hierarchy is a big part of kind of why they've all sworn an oath. They all have their positions, and Starbuck is the one agonizing, but the rest have all kind of gone over to the other side.
Mm-hmm. Well, Starbuck feels a duty to that tug of the will. So he comes back to I went to just to pick up on that the last 2.5 pages of this chapter where he comes to this, skipping over a little. He's talking about the monomaniacal character of Ahab. It is not probable that this monomania in him took its instant rise at the precise time of his bodily dismemberment. It's not just the whale that did this to him. Then, in darting at the monster, knife in hand, he had but given loose to a sudden, passionate, corporal animosity. And when he received the stroke that tore him, he probably but felt the agonizing bodily laceration, but nothing more. Yet when by this collision forced to turn towards home, and for long months of days and weeks, Ahab and anguish lay stretched together in one hammock, rounding in midwinter that dreary, howling Patagonian cape, then it was that his torn body and gashed soul bled into one another, and so interfusing made him mad. That it was only then, on the homeward voyage, after the encounter, that the final monomania seized him, seems all but certain from the fact that at intervals during the passage, he was a raving lunatic, and though unlimbed of a leg, yet such vital strength yet lurked in his Egyptian chest, and was moreover intensified by his delirium, that his mates were forced to lace him fast, even there, as he sailed raving in his hammock, in a straitjacket, He swung to the mad rockings of the gales. And when running into more sufferable latitudes, the ship with mild sunsails spread floated across the tranquil tropics, and to all appearances the old man's delirium seemed left behind him with the Cape Horn swells, and he came forth from his dark den into the blessed light and air. And I'll just finish off. Blessed light and air. Even then, when he bore that firm, collected front, however pale, and issued his calm orders once again, and his mates, thank God, the direful madness was now gone. Even then, Ahab, in his hidden self, raved on. Human madness is oftentimes a cunning and most feline thing. And then we go over to the last paragraph. Someone want to read the last paragraph of the chapter? Melissa, go for it.
Here then was this gray-headed, ungodly old man chasing with curses a Job's wail round the world, at the head of a crew, too, chiefly made up of mongrel renegades and castaways and cannibals, morally enfeebled also by the incompetence of mere unaided virtue or right-mindedness in Starbuck, the invulnerable jollity of indifference and recklessness in Stubb, and the pervading mediocrity in Flask. Such a crew, so officered, seemed specially picked and packed by some infernal fatality to help him to his monomaniac revenge. How it was that they so aboundingly responded to the old man's ire, by what evil magic their souls were possessed, that at times his hate seemed almost theirs, the white whale as much their insufferable foe as his, how all this came to be, what the white whale was to them, or how to their unconscious understandings also in some dim, unsuspected way he might have seemed the gliding great demon of the seas of life. All this to explain would be to dive deeper than Ishmael can go. The subterranean miner that works in us all, how can one tell whither leads his shaft by the ever-shifting, muffled sound of his pick? Who does not feel the irresistible arm drag? What skiff in tow of 74 can stand still? For one, I gave myself up to the abandonment of the time and the place, but while yet all a rush to encounter the whale, could see naught in that brute but the deadliest ill.
And so, we can ask, what is that deadliest ill? But there's also this sense of it takes us back to the ineffable, the indefinable, right? This idea that you can't fight with God, you can't overcome chaos. And the whale will also be called chaos. Relationship. Thoughts? I want to go to the next chapter, but I don't think we're going to make it there tonight. But I'll just add our first sentence here for next week what the white whale was to Ahab has been hinted. What at times he was to me as yet remains unsaid. So there's a question of, do we really get to know, are we getting the answer? And then is he taking it away from us the moment that we have a little bit of certainty?
I just wouldn't want it to escape notice that in what you read, your Homeric allusion was borne out with his mates were forced to last him to the mast.
Yes, his madness. They were forced to bind him as well. Yeah.
Yeah, also there's a Miltonic thing I picked up, the ire, the old man's ire, and that word ire is used. I can't remember the exact Milton thing, but that's the Satan's, it's associated with Satan. He has that same will to, get back at God and
yes.
This I wrote in my margin at the very end, I wrote, "Who's talking?"
Of this chapter?
Yeah, what you just finished reading, what Melissa read, the subterranean miner that works in us all. How can one tell whither leads this shaft? So this is this Ishmael, the narrator? Have we transcended out into, because it's such a a kind of global voice for the themes of the the book, of the story,
Yeah.
who does not feel the irresistible arm drag? And you know, the someone mentioned last time the 50s movie of Moby-Dick
Right.
and the last scene of it where he's lashed to the side. And I have forever in my young brain burned Gregory Peck's arm sort of waving as the whale goes down. And anyway, so that's the arm I see.
I still haven't watched it.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you. I mean, I haven't seen it in this this half of my life, so I don't know. But yeah, it's a really striking passage. It's definitely a setup for the rest, the book. I mean, this is what we're doing.
Yes.
Everything's focused on this encounter with the whale, and all these threads are brought together to that purpose.
And we have it's all building up to these opening lines in 42, these past few chapters. What the white whale was to Ahab has been hinted. What at times he was to me as yet remains unsaid.
Yeah. See, that me seems very different from the me of who does not feel the irresistible arm drag. It's really, I think it's the narrator, but the narrator has many modes, I suspect.
Where is that?
Yes.
Who is the resistible thing you're talking about, Joe? Where is that?
It's at the very end of what Melissa read.
Yeah. Marilyn?
I have a question. So it seems like there's multiple layers. There's the larger questions, the existence of man, the enlightenment kind of themes. But there's also, I'm struck when he talks about the nature of the crew, the motley crew, so to speak. Do you think that Melville was reflecting American society at that time? That it was a motley crew, and it seems like it does harken back to the history of the United States and how the country was settled by people that were very much like what he's describing. So my question is, do you think he's trying to describe what he's experiencing in that period about American culture and society with the composition of the crew?
I think that's an entirely fair read of the text, and it often gets read politically through that lens at a couple different levels. One at the level that Hart brought up earlier in the question of democracy and the future of democracy, and whether or not we can take the Pequod itself as an image for America, and the question of the voyage and the kind of the religious and metaphysical crises of the United States that Melville was witnessing at the time, the political fracture of society, and the question of what happens when faith collapses completely into reason in the modern era, and does one submit to the whale or does one try to conquer it? And I think, I've noticed some of the comments, and some people are also thinking about, reading this book within the context of what appears to be a kind of collapsing American democracy in some ways in this moment. But there is a question of, just to reiterate that kind of, that, well, I won't use the word metaphysical again. What do I want to say? It's a kind of, so it's a crisis of, I always think of it in terms of meaning, kind of crisis of meaning, but not in a superficial or even kind of existential way, but in the sense of, where do we get our meaning from in life? And so how do the social structures that underpin a society help confer that meaning by offering people a place of belonging? And what does it mean to belong in this sense? And so I think that's also part of the larger question. All right, Melissa, Pat, and Martha, you get the last notes, comments for the evening. Melissa?
So the chapter 41, I've always thought of as sort of bringing us up short and reminding us what we're talking about and kind of stitching everything together to that point and setting us on, pointing us in the right direction, sort of steering us. At one point, I even marked that last paragraph that I read aloud as sort of the thesis. Like, in case you haven't been following, here's a quick recap. This is how recap. This is how we end up where we're at. I also maintain that if you've read this novel enough, you can probably go through and just read the last one or two paragraphs of each chapter and realize that one of the narrators that's at work is sort of Ishmael the philosopher, because he seems like he saves these gems for the conclusion of each one, that you can actually get the meaning of the novel simply by reading these gems at the conclusion of nearly every one of the chapters. So it's a fun way to look at the book too.
Right. Yes. Pat?
Just a quick comment, and I'll carry it to next week, I think, about how we change our mind over time of how we look at history.
Yes.
And that will come up for me again as we talk about the chapter about the Erie Canal.
Yes.
And the depiction of the canalers.
Yes. Question of history, historicizing versus philosophizing is two narratives.
And romanticizing.
And romanticizing. Yes. Martha.
I'm struck by the comments that people were making about thinking about this time period. And I go back to one of the chapters where he's talking about the importance of the ambergris in making kings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And keeps going back to this other moment prior to the rise of modernity. And then I think about what you had just read regarding Starbuck talking about he drilled into my soul, right? It's the machinery of modernity. So I'm thinking that yes, it makes sense to read the book in this moment because the world is changing. We're in this moment right now where the world is completely changing. And, there's been a lot of commentary about how people feel like everything is shifted since COVID, right? So it's like the world is kind of like moving, and are we going to move with it? And I think there's a lot of existential angst right now about what does it mean? Because you can't understand America right now without looking at it within the larger global context. And I think even when Melville was writing this novel, it does seem to us, because it is about American imperialism, the rise of American imperialism almost. It's still within this a very, very much larger global context. And so I think about the sea and how overwhelming it is. But you had mentioned it, I think, during the first meeting. The sea at that moment is connecting. It's creating all of these, this true globalization, this moment of true globalization. So at the same time, the sea is so much larger than the continents, right? And it's so overwhelming. To even be out on the sea, to even go out on the sea. I mean, I love the sea, but it is, and I think one of the things about it is we're land creatures. We're not of the sea. And so there is this kind of like tension of these men who are willing to just go out and live. I think Ishmael mentions it towards the beginning of the novel. It's like he talks about that one sailor who there was talk about him in the town, who had just come back, and there he was getting on the ship again. And I was just like, wow, like that's like the life of
that's Bulkington. That's the need man who cannot survive.
Yeah, and
one who doesn't have connection to meaning. Yeah.
so it's incredibly beautiful in that way. And I guess the last thing I'll say, because there was another scene but I'll leave the other scene till the end, when we come back next week. But I wanted to throw out, I encourage people to watch the Ethan Hawke version that just came out. I thought it was really well done.
I don't know how anyone can watch a film adaptation of this book, but that's just me. We should have a larger conversation about this. Maybe you'll help me overcome some psychological barrier that I have.
It's a pretty,
we can post it in the chat.
I thought it does a pretty, I mean, it kind of shows the kind of awful way he's describing the crew, because
I think it's a good place to pick up next week. So I thank you for that, and we will definitely pick up with Whiteness, and we can post some clips for people to watch in the chat as well to continue the conversation. I'll see some of you in half an hour for Yates. Thank you so much. This was really lovely. And thank you for the fantastic reading tonight. These are some, I mean, it's all extraordinarily beautiful, but it was really fun. So thank you. And thank you so much.
Great.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.